to College Applications 101, hosted by Alex Xiao. So, today what we're going to do is go over college requirements, milestones, terms explanation, as well as deadlines. This is all the entire college application process, so this is from junior year summer until senior year. So, right now, what you have to realize that in college, when it comes to college applications, everyone is going to have a competitive SAT and a GPA. Now, what I'm going to say here is these are the top schools, obviously. So if you're shooting for them, then you should take a look at this graph and realize what you're dealing with. But when it comes to other mid-level schools, GPA is king. GPA is the most important part of the college application cycle. Now, I say it's the most important part because you have to be able to understand where your GPA ranks in the grand scheme of things. When it comes to mid-level schools, like maybe UC Merced or something like that, anything below top 30, I would say, your GPA matters a lot. So when it comes to like weighted, your average should always be, you should always aim for above a 4.0 no matter what school you go to, considering the environment is only going to get more and more competitive as time goes on. For example, things like grade inflation and multiple AP classes, all of this will determine your GPA, and your GPA is super important, and it's basically, it gets you in the door of college applications. So if you don't have a good GPA, don't fear. Sometimes you can make it up in senior year, sometimes you can't. For example, in the UCs, it only takes 10 to 11, so meaning if you didn't do very well in senior year, that's a good news for you. However, SAT for out-of-state schools, not talking about California, SAT is basically required. You need a competitive SAT in order to be on the same playing field as some of these other kids, because you have to realize the SAT is an objective view of how smart you are. Math, English, this is all determined by your SAT. And for example, if you don't have a very high SAT, your chances are that you'll be beaten out by someone else who does have a high SAT. Even if you're in California, where you don't need SAT for California schools, you should, if you want to apply to out of state, you need an SAT. Even if schools are test optional, a kid with an SAT will always be better than a kid without an SAT score. Now, these are averages. Take a look. You can search up all the UC averages depending on whatever you need, but just remember that GPA is the most important part of the college application process. Next, extracurriculars are the second big part. Extracurriculars are needed to show that you are not just a nerd and you actually have potential to be at the school, because it has to align with whatever major you're going for. Now, there are students that are undecided. This is completely fine. However, your extracurriculars, if you do choose one, like a competitive one, like for example, data science is what I'm doing, you need to do an extracurricular that relates to that major that you're going for, especially if it's competitive. Computer science. If you're doing computer science, make sure you have computer science extracurriculars. Make sure you do things by the book and realize that even though you may have some volunteering or community service here and there, that's a good thing. However, your major needs to align with your extracurriculars. If I do robotics, then I'm going towards engineering or computer science. So that's kind of how things align. A person with an extracurricular that matches one thing while their major says another thing may be impacted by their use of extracurriculars. Next, rankings for schools. When you're going to compile a college list, you need to remember what ranking these schools are. Whether or not you can afford it is another question. However, ranking is pretty much what determines whether or not in life you'll be successful. Now take that with a grain of salt, because you have to realize ranking is important, but as I said before, I might have said that it determines what you do in life, but in reality, it just helps you. It just helps you make connections with those around you. The higher the ranking and the more prestigious it is, the more employers would like you compared to another school. So ranking is pretty important if you want to get a job, obviously, but it's not everything. Even if you don't get into a very good school, trust me, if it's good for your affording, then that's all that matters. Now, for example, this is my college application spreadsheet. I have the names here, I have the due dates for each of the schools, I have the ranking, I have the admission notification date, I have the application costs. All of these are important things. For example, I have broken down the cost of living, the cost of tuition. All of these are super important when you choose a college. Now, when it comes to trending of acceptance rates, that's really important too. But acceptance rates can be kind of misleading. Number one, because you have to make sure you type up acceptance rates by major and what major you're going for. Now, for example, getting into MIT for art is a lot easier than getting into MIT for engineering, because different majors are different impacted and have different acceptance rates. Now, as we can see here, this is UCLA as an example. Acceptance rates are always going to be trending down. More and more people are applying to college, and one of the reasons that is because test optional is now a thing. Test optional allows for those who previously wouldn't have thought about applying to this college to now apply actually, because they think they have a chance now. Now, even though this acceptance rate is really low, it doesn't mean you don't have a chance. You just need to make sure that you are good enough for that major and for that school. So acceptance rate is pretty important, but it may be a bit misleading. So always remember your major depends on your acceptance rate. Now, what increases your chances of being accepted? We talked about GPA, we talked about extracurriculars. Now I'm going to talk about awards and essays. Awards are pretty important because it shows that you're different from the rest of your peers. It shows you that you're really good at a certain thing. However, when it comes to things like essays, this is where you need to shine, because this is genuinely how you differentiate yourself from the rest of the people. Now, an essay is supposed to go into who you are as a person. It shows the college that you're not just some list of extracurriculars and GPA, you're actually a human being that they want at this school. Be unique. Don't try and be overly unique because colleges can tell, but tell your story. Talk about an extracurricular event that you had and what you did during that event, and not just what you did, like how you felt, what that experience was like. That's all really important. However, make sure you choose to elaborate on one of the extracurriculars. If you have talked in depth about an extracurricular in like the section where it tells you to describe it, don't choose the extracurricular. If there's a weaker extracurricular description and you wanted to tell the person reviewing your college application more about it, use that as your essay topic. And awards are super important, but awards are something you should be going for only if you can do it. Like a math Olympiad is really helpful. But if you, like me, I'm not really big into awards, so I just decided to go all in on my extracurriculars and essays. Now, one of the example timelines that we have is starting very, very early. I started in early July. This gave me enough time to finish up some last minute extracurriculars, start brainstorming my essays based on the experiences I had in the years beforehand, and start drafting. Now, once we hit August, you should start filling out the application info for all of your portals. Now, I know it's going to take a little bit of time, but it's way better to have everything locked and loaded. Make sure all your classes, all the grades that you put in for each year are correct, and then you don't have to worry about it last minute. And then what you want to do is you start reviewing your drafts of your essay, because you're going to need to polish over and over again, because your essays are super, super important. And then lastly, throughout this entire process, you can just ask for letters of recommendation if your school needs them, the ones that you're applying to. Now, what I'm trying to say here is start as early as possible. I regret starting not early for my Common App, but I started really early for my UCs, so I'm more stronger on that. The more time you have, the better essays you will write. That's kind of obvious. Now, some of the terms that we have to explain include early action and early decision. Now, it may be a bit confusing, and I'll tell you what it is about. So, early action is the earliest decision period that you can send your college application. So I said decision. So early decision is where you're locked in to that school. So early decision is typically earlier than early action, I would assume, for my experience. Anyway, early decision is you pick that one school that you want to go to, and if you get in, you have to go there no matter what school you get accepted to. You have no choice. You are contractually obligated to go. Early action is giving you a leg up over other people. So meaning you can submit your application a bit earlier, so you can get out of the way earlier. I personally did early action for everything because I did not want to deal with the entire process longer than I had to. Now, early action, the pros and the cons is that, number one, you get a smaller pool of applicants, fewer competitors, but the issue is those of us that apply early action typically had more prep time and had better extracurriculars and are really confident in themselves. So you're putting yourself in a smaller pool of more competitive applicants. So if you think you can beat them out, then of course go early action. I believe in my opinion, the trend of early action is the new regular decision is really true, because a lot of people always want to think, I might as well get ahead of the game. So a lot of people are going to start doing early action. However, early decision is, it increases your chances a lot, because it shows the college that I will go here because I have no other choice. So if you want to go to a really good school, make sure you early decision that one if it's your dream school. And here are all the school deadlines and different application platforms. Now, for example, I live in California, so we have the UC application here, we have the Cal State application here, and lastly we have Common App. Common App is the most, well, common. It's the one where you're gonna apply to all the out-of-state ones if you live in California. And there's all the different deadlines, they change by year, but basically for early action, it starts all the way, you have to submit it by like November. So you're out of the game pretty early, which is good news for you if you like to get things early done. So thank you for today's video, and subscribe.